I just noticed this flag, which is from a group that actually carried out some operations in my country.
And we have a lot of people still imprisoned by the Spanish government who took part in the Basque conflict. It's just a horrendous attitude that the Spanish seem to have towards the people who are currently holding.
Some people will call you a terrorist. Where do you see yourself?
In 1978, I was charged with killing one particular member of the British forces and sentenced to life imprisonment. Yeah, I was involved in an anti-colonial struggle, so I think it was legitimate. I've also asked English people, what was this stuff about Churchill? What was wrong with Germans coming over to occupy England? No big deal. Me a terrorist? No, I was an Irishman on the island of Ireland, taking actions against the foreign government. See, the disposal of the weapons, it was more of a PR stunt. But as everybody knows, the IRA really doesn't have difficulty purchasing weapons.
Was the armed struggle necessary?
Yeah.
Would you do it again? Muy buenas a todos, bienvenidos al nuevo podcast del Cambio de Guardia. Hoy desde una localización un tanto inusual como puede ser Belfast, la capital de Irlanda del Norte, y tengo la suerte de contar conmigo con una persona que vivió los conocidos como troubles y conocidos en español como problemas, ¿vale? De una forma muy cercana. Él ha pasado 16 años en la cárcel y está hoy conmigo para contarnos sus experiencias allí y también cómo vivió el conflicto. Sin más dilación, Michael Culbert. Michael, how are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Welcome to, well, you should welcome me, because now
welcome
we are...
Welcome to Belfast. Fáilte go Belfast, yeah. Agus to Siolog go me gagrod Cargalor, that's a... I too have my language.
I know you do, I know you do. So I did a brief introduction about yourself, but if you could tell in your own words who is Michael Culbert for the audience, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, I'm Michael Culbert. I'm an old man now. I've lived all of my life in West Belfast. A working class family. I was the youngest of 7 children. Pretty good schooling. After schooling, I joined the British Civil Service and worked within the Inland Revenue. I worked at that for 6 years. Got married, settled down, wife, children. I left that and then got myself qualified as a social worker, and I worked as a social worker for maybe 5 years up until 1978, and then my life took a major turn. So that's roughly my career. I went to prison in 1978, spent approximately 16 years in prison, came out and began working in adult education as a tutor. I worked at that for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then I moved into working with the political ex-prisoner community, particularly people who were in prison for the IRA activities. And I eventually became the director of the national organisation. Over the period of the conflict here, we've had approximately 24,000 people imprisoned from various parts of the island of Ireland. At one stage we had maybe 14 offices dealing with those people. Family issues, counselling issues, welfare issues, housing issues, legal issues, and we were the touch point for those people in different parts of Ireland.
Okay.
That was funded by European community funding. That is all stopped now, so we still have the personnel, but we don't have the premises, etc. We're very limited in premises, but we still offer our services to the political ex-prisoner community.
Right. And what happened in 1978?
In 1978, I was arrested by the British military. They actually raided my home and arrested me and took me to an interrogation centre, as a result of which I was charged with killing one particular member of the British forces. 6 months earlier, I had also been arrested and accused of killing another one of them, but that charge was dropped against me, and then this time the charge wasn't dropped. I was charged with killing a member of the police force, shooting him dead. So I was processed eventually through the courts after 2 years and sentenced to life imprisonment. I was sentenced in the end of 1979, Christmas 79, just in the... I eventually then spent 16 years in Long Cache prison throughout the hunger strikes, throughout the blanket protest. But eventually the political talks were underway during the 1990s, and as a result of that, a lot of the life sentence prisoners were released, and I was one of them, thankfully.
Okay, and you mentioned the protest, the hunger strikes.
Yeah.
Were you involved somehow in like taking the decisions, or?
Well, I was just another member. I was just another political prisoner. We held many discussions in the lead into the hunger strike. Many discussions during the hunger strike. We had our own command staff within the prison, and we were constantly in touch with our personnel who weren't imprisoned on the outside. So a lot of discussion was held about the holding of the hunger strike and the continuation of the hunger strike, and eventually whether or not to terminate the hunger strike.
Yeah, because some people don't know, but like there was a first attempt.
There was initially a hunger strike in 1980 that ended in a bit of we considered that the British government had sent envoys in to the people who were on hunger strike and lied to them, as a result of which the hunger strike ended. Well, once a hunger strike ends, you can't really quite restart it. So the people who were on hunger strike, there was one man was basically thought to, on the point of dying. It was a very tense time, but the British government lied about the agreement which was made with the hunger strikers. Then approximately maybe 6 months later, it was decided that a new hunger strike would be entered with a different tactical approach to the hunger strike. Initially, the first hunger strike in 1980, all those who were going on hunger strike went on hunger strike at the one time. That was found to be an error. And what happened then with the second hunger strike, it was phased entry into the hunger strike, which pulled it out over a long period of time. And unfortunately, 10 men died on the hunger strike. And the awful thing about that, I might have a simplistic view of it, but the awful thing about that is the British government gave us everything which we had wanted, but they had let 10 men die.
Yeah, because that was
if
after.
They were going to give the conditions which we then got, they should have given it prior to men dying. You know, it was.
Because you mentioned, like, is that like after the hunger strike there were some regulations?
There's major changes in our living conditions in the prison.
Okay.
We won the right to our own clothes and free association among ourselves. We were able to stay together in wings. We were able to self-educate. We basically got exactly what we wanted. But unfortunately, 10 of our comrades died. Led, of course, as everybody knows, by Bobby Sands. And 10 men died. And if the British government were going to give it, why didn't they just give it?
So what are your thoughts on the British government not giving you those let's say, those rights?
Well, yeah, they did give us them, but they let 10 men die before they gave them. Yeah. So I don't know. Them obviously, it was the British Conservative. Initially, it was a British Labour government, and then British Conservative government. Mrs. Thatcher sort of was showing off to the world how strong a person, the Iron Lady facade. But we got what we needed. The point was proven. Sort of just less than 2 years later, we had a massive escape out of the prison.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah. In 1983, basically a full block of the IRA prisoners escaped from the jail. Yeah.
How that happened?
Well, it happened because of it was maybe a year and a half planning. The prison escape was led by Bobby Story, and who's now dead, and a man called Jerry Kelly, who's now elected representative within our community. But that escape happened, and it was a real slap in the face to the British Tories, and it was our PR. It was a great PR for us all those men to escape from the prison and re-engage in the political struggle. Yeah. Some men went to the United States and were subsequently extradited, but most men returned to the various aspects of the conflict. Sure.
Tell us about the, those years before 1978. Like, what was the atmosphere like in Belfast?
Well, Belfast would have been possibly seen as one of the hubs of the conflict, along with some of the rural communities. Belfast was a very tense time. We had the re-entry of the British military onto our streets in 1969, and to a degree there was a certain amount of welcome to them because of the onslaught on nationalist areas. But eventually the British Army proved, what the reason why they were here. House searches, arms retrieval by them, etc. And what we basically had then from roughly 1970 was the British military on our streets. They had never fully left the north of Ireland, but they were actually on our streets. I'll deviate a little bit. I talk quite a lot with foreign visitors, American visitors and stuff, giving them a little bit of the conflict here. And what I say to them is, what exactly is it you're going to do knowing the Russian paratroops arrive in Nebraska? What are you going to do? And of course the Americans say, oh yeah, well, we would not want that. And I said, well, I'm Irish, Ireland, British soldiers. Can I not do what you would do, but you will call me a terrorist? Yeah, we'll get the picture, yeah. And they do get the picture, but sometimes they just don't look at the picture in the same way as when you lay it out in front of them. Mm-hmm. So, so in 1970, roughly, the IRA had reorganized. You see, people take what happened from 1970 or 1969 on as being this new thing. Ireland has been occupied by the British for 800 years, and roughly every 50 years there's a resurgence of an attempt to remove that governance of the British from Ireland. It's no different from 1970 here on the island of Ireland. There was a resurgence of Irish Republican activity to try and remove the British governance from the island, and that lasted right up until the Good Friday Agreement, basically. Well, it lasted up until the IRA cessation in '94, and subsequently we've had the international agreement, which is called the Good Friday Agreement. So, to a degree, I think that proves our point of why we were engaged in it. If it wasn't justified, how come there was an international agreement to end it? If we were terrorists, if we didn't have a justification for doing what we did. And as I said to you, when I explained to the Americans, I just put that to them, what do you do when the Russians arrive? And they all bite at it.
And so what crosses your mind to become a member of the IRA?
Well, I would have had a pretty good education behind me, and I would have a fair, I think, this might sound wrong to you, but I think of a fair moral code, moral compass. I know right from wrong. And I come from a family, my grandfather was a British soldier, didn't come home from the First World War. That's my mother's father. So there's a degree of British background in my family, although he possibly was an economic recruit to the British Army, but he fought for the British Army during the First War, fair enough. So I don't come from an Irish Republican family background per se, but I'd be pretty well read, and it would be, as I say to you, with my moral compass, I think it wrong for the island of Ireland, part of it, to be ruled by a foreign country. And there just did not seem to be a way of changing that system through the electoral system, given the structure which existed from 1921 on the island of Ireland. It has been acknowledged by the British government that there was a corrupt political system put in place here with the majority rule of pro-British orientation. And you could say, well, that's fair enough. It would be fair enough if the system was fair, but it wasn't. There was major discrimination in employment and housing and various social conditions. And the reason for the discrimination was that those who considered themselves Native Irish were the group being discriminated against on the island of Ireland.
Okay.
So there was that inevitability, given the history which I had explained to you earlier, that roughly every 50 years there is this push to remove the British governance from part of the island. which was started by the British government in 1921.
Okay. So 1978, when the police come to your house and they raid it and they took you to their headquarters, I suppose.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the treatment like they gave you?
Well, the situation with me was quite, it's strange enough to say. In 1977, I had been arrested and accused of shooting dead a British soldier. And I was held for quite a few days, and I was very, very badly beaten up. Oh yeah, I was beaten up consistently over a period of maybe 3-4 days. And when I say beaten up, I mean a man sitting on top of me, punching me, as in a police officer. As luck had it at the time, Amnesty International were in Belfast the day that I got out they released me. And I did an interview with Amnesty International, and they examined me, took my clothes off and the bruising, and they did quite a major report on my treatment within the barracks and interrogation centre. So that was in 1977. Well then, when they arrested me again in 1978, they didn't. They didn't. They were very careful in their handling with me. But I was then charged with that activity of killing the police man. I was charged with no evidence against me. I was charged on the strength of what they say was a statement that I said, yeah, I shot him. I denied it.
So how come did you sign?
Oh, no.
But
no.
You said something?
No.
Okay.
No, they said that I did. So in those days, the legislation was such that if a police officer said that you said, then, it's a matter of the judge then deciding who's telling the truth.
Okay. So this is basically evidence.
There's no factual, there's no material evidence against me.
It's basically evidence taken from your
interrogation
when you were being interrogated and probably beaten up. Yeah.
But the how I would put it is that there was absolutely no evidence against me, bar a police officer saying, yeah, I said that, yeah, I did shot him. So the baseline is, I was processed then through the courts, and then eventually found guilty by the British judge, and sentenced to life imprisonment, and I spent overall about 16 years in prison. Okay. And I got out at 1993, which was roughly at the early stages or middle stages of the talks which were going on about the...
Okay, so from life imprisonment to 16 years. Mm-hmm. How come that it was reduced?
Because the British government... Okay. See, sometimes you will have to give a little bit of credit to the British, not a lot, but a little bit of credit, that obviously as part of the talks which had been going on from the maybe late 1980s, the Republican movement was talking with the British, and then the British started to introduce different circumstances within the prisons. We refused, Republican prisoners refused to come to participate in any of the prison procedures. So the British government then introduced new procedures which then made it easier to start releasing life sentence prisoners.
Okay.
At one stage to get out of prison as a life sentence prisoner, you had to be changed and reformed and sorry about your activities. Well, we were political prisoners. We weren't sorry. We were just political prisoners. And we were in prison until we were getting out of prison, whenever that was. But the British government changed the rules that you didn't have to regret your previous activities.
Okay.
So they started, to me, it was a very clever move by the British, because we had maybe several hundred life sentence prisoners who were never getting out of prison. Mm-hmm. So we were a major societal block to changes. People's views about the British were such that with all these prisoners, they're never getting out of prison. Yeah. So the British government changed the rules and started letting us out of prison. Right. And eventually I was one of the people who got out of prison.
Okay. And just a quick question on I want to talk about like life in prison, because you were in Mace.
Long Cache.
And how was that? What did it look like?
Well, it was,
at the time?
Well, it was a one-story H-shaped building, which when you think of a H and a crossbar on the H, then you have 4 different arms on the H, and each of those arms held 23, 24 cells. And in each of the cells, there would have been one person. So in a H block, you'd have had 1, 2, 3, 4 cells, 4 wings, and maybe 24, 25 people in each cell.
Okay.
Or in each of those blocks. So in each block, there would have been about 70 to 100 people each.
Okay.
And all on the blanket protest. We were naked in our cells.
How was that?
It was quite awkward because sometimes you were also in a cell with another man, but it was cold and it wasn't that nice and it was very socially isolated. You had no other things bar 4 walls and a sponge mattress and a blanket on you. You had no stimulation. And the windows were blocked by the prison, so you weren't able to see out, and
Okay.
it was quite difficult, but it was of our own choosing to be there.
And it was cold, as I understand.
Yeah, it was always cold
Yeah.
because you were naked. You had nothing on your feet. Cement floors. Cement is very cold.
Yeah. How did you communicate with other prisoners?
Shouting.
Shouting.
Yeah.
And did you communicate with the other blocks that were across?
Yes. Yeah. You had blocks beside each other and the other side. And what happened at night? Within the block, you were able to shout, and you'd have heard. And maybe about 7:30 at night, prison staff left the block, and that was entirely us. And then the orders came from whoever was in charge for total silence. And then one wing would shout to another wing, that wing would shout to another wing, and then that wing would shout to that wing, and then we would get all the information, whatever it was being relayed for that day. When it was all gathered together, whichever wing was nearest the other block, because there was major fences, someone here would shout to get over to the other block. It was quite an amazing piece of communication. And that's how we did. We communicated sort of by shouting.
Yeah.
And it was all done in Irish, in our own language.
Right.
Because most of the prison staff didn't have our language, so couldn't understand what we were talking about.
Okay. Were they British or were they?
Quite a few of them were British soldiers who had served here and then had got a handy enough job working as prison staff. But most of them would have been locally recruited people, mostly from the unionist community.
Okay.
And strangely enough, the former British soldiers tended to be the more decent of the staff. I don't really know why, but they seem to have a little bit of regard for us that the locally recruited personnel didn't have.
Okay.
And maybe some of them had been previously in conflict with us on the outside,
Right.
also.
And were there any sort of retaliations against the guards?
Yes, quite a few of the prison guards were shot dead by the IRA.
Okay.
Because of their treatment of us. And once you were captured, you're out of. But that's not how we were treated by the majority of the prison staff. They were quite brutal to us. We were just refusing to cooperate in the prison where there's no violence from us because we were naked. But they wouldn't let us out to the toilets and stuff, and that's why the protest then we had to put excrement on the walls, etc., because there was nowhere else. They wouldn't let us out to the toilets. They would have let us out to the toilets if we'd put on a prison uniform. But we refused to put on prison uniform because the prison uniform was a criminal uniform, and we weren't criminals. We wanted our own clothes. So we refused to put on prison uniform, as a result of which a lot more restrictions came on top of us.
Okay.
So let's say there was 3 full blocks of us, maybe about 400 or so of us protesting, but there were other blocks where people did wear the prison uniform and they weren't on protest.
Okay. Were there any beatings or torture?
Yeah, well, there was beatings were very commonplace. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and degrading treatment too of us. they introduced various degrading treatment, which was maybe to discourage us from staying on the protest. You know, they some of their it's actually quite difficult even to say about their behaviour. At one stage, they were using prongs into people's anuses to probe and see if there was anything hidden, because we were naked, and if we had equipment that they didn't know about, they assumed that the stuff would be inside us. No, it was unbelievable what they were prepared to do. But the IRA on the outside took action against quite a few of them and killed them.
Okay. That's eye for an eye, I suppose.
Well, it was a situation where we were totally naked and defenseless and captured. There's something about we were out of it, but they still were fighting us in the jail. So therefore, our comrades on the outside then took actions against those who they were specifically identified as being very, very bad. Some of the prison staff were okay. Actually, some of them very, very discreetly indicated to you, I don't want to be here doing this, but it was a job. Some of them made it very clear they didn't want to be, but some of them made it very clear that their political views maybe were the mobilization for them to take those activities against them.
Okay.
But as I said to you, the strange thing was, it's very, very few of the former British soldiers were that way inclined. They mostly were the decent enough prison staff. That was my experience. Oh no, it's true. It's right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about. It will come to my mind. Yeah, basically, what's because some people will call you a terrorist, and then some others will call you a fighter for freedom. Let's say, where do you see yourself, and why?
Well, as I said to you, when I went into prison, I was a social worker, right? My wife was a school teacher. I had 2 sons. I had my own home. I don't think I fit whatever that mental picture is of the terrorist. I was an Irish nationalist. I was an Irish Republican in my own country, which I thought was quite legitimate to oppose a foreign army in my country. And I was only that was me, one person at a particular period in time, continuing what has been going on for hundreds of years. I wouldn't have had the language then, but when I look back on it, I had the motivation of fighting colonialism. I wouldn't have used that language then. I would have been fighting the British. But when I look back on it, nowadays I would have the language to say, yeah, I think it was fair enough. Anti-colonial struggles have been carried out throughout the world for centuries. And the Irish probably would have been the first colony of the English or stroke British. And we remain that sort of still, although we're working now to try and end it finally through the electoral process. So I know I've wandered a bit in answering you here on that, but yeah, I was involved in an anti-colonial struggle, so I think it was legitimate. And as once again, as I said to you, I asked different people. I mean, I've also asked English people, what was this stuff about Churchill in 1940? What was this about he's going to fight them on the beaches? Are you aware of that speech he made? There was a famous speech by Churchill about Germans.
I am indeed, yeah.
Yeah. What was wrong with the Germans coming over to occupy England? No big deal. And what about the terrorists, the French terrorists? Some people call them the resistance. You with me? Language is vital here in these situations.
Yeah.
So, me a terrorist? No, I was an Irishman on the island of Ireland, taking actions against a foreign government. Put whatever language you want onto it. But language is vital for the narrative to be correct. Yeah. No, I was just an Irishman.
And what about the civilians?
Which civilians?
The ones that died during the conflict.
Awful. awful. No, that's awful. Actually, this may seem sort of contradictory to you, but I know a lot of people who were in prison because of their caution and taking caution to prevent civilian injury. We didn't want to, I mean, we needed the support of the base community. So the last thing that we really wanted to do was to injure or kill civilians. They were our support base. Now, this is where it might sound as if I'm splitting hairs, but I will try and be very, very frank with you. There are people who were not members of the formal British forces, but who were activists on behalf of the British forces. You know, people who would be referred to with the label of loyalists. Many times there were many loyalists attacked by Irish Republicans because of their activities against the communities, right, on behalf of the state. But sometimes there were also accidents and civilians were killed. And any time there were civilians killed, the Republican movement apologised for it. And absolutely, and quite awful that it happened, but quite correct to apologise for it, because killing civilians was wrong, as long as they weren't also activists on behalf of the state, i.e. loyalist activists.
Because if I understand correctly, you're saying some of those that are counted as civilians were members of the British forces. Is that what you're saying?
Right. From forever, and nearly every colonial situation, the colonizer has always utilised illegal forces on their side. French have used it, the Spanish have used it in Africa, the Americans have used it in Vietnam. I mean, every colonizer has a locally recruited legal and also a subtle illegal force to do what the legal force can't do. It's happened all over the world. Well, those people who were members of the legal civilian groupings taking actions against Irish Republicans, I don't consider them civilians, I consider them loyalist activists.
Yeah.
But civilians who had nothing to do with anything here, who were killed, let's say bombs went off early or wrongly placed or whatever, that was awful. This is where the moral compass has to come in. You have to not be targeting people. However, if people were members of civilian groupings who were also armed groupings taking action against Republican forces, I don't count them as being civilians. In the same way, if I had been killed, I would have been regarded as a civilian.
Yeah, no, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
Exactly,
I got you. It's hard to qualify and it's complicated, but it's worth qualifying.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a new thing, this situation here on the island of Ireland. All colonisers have those illegal groupings, or had.
Oh, what was about like the term someone created or made up about the prison being the university for terrorists?
Yeah,
someone said that, right?
Oh yeah, no, I've heard that. I've heard that many. Actually, I went through a lot of education courses within the prison. Eventually,
Okay.
well, I would suggest that most of the education done within the prison was our own education, informal education. But a lot of us went through and got specific formal qualifications also. So one of the driving forces in the jail was to leave the jail a better person if you're getting out than when you came in, and better being qualified as being knowing more about why it's correct to carry on the struggle. And I wouldn't know for a fact, but I could maybe glibly say I have a feeling that the education system within the prison was a major factor in the ending of the conflict. I think in order to fully understand all aspects of the why of a conflict, you need a broad view of the world. And that's one thing which we learned within the prison. Because, I mean, there were thousands of us went through the prisons. There wasn't only the one prison. There was prisons in the south of Ireland. There was two main prisons in the north of Ireland. And we had prisoners in different jails in England. So our own education and learning, I think, assisted us in broadening our view as opposed to there's the war or not. There's the war, and then there's electoral politics, and there's dialogue. But at one stage, when you're at one stage, you have to work out the way of moving on to the other stage. And I think we eventually managed that very well. Proof of the pudding is we're the biggest political party on the land now. So something has worked out well, and it just didn't happen. There's no magic dust. So if we go back in time, a lot of the drivers for political change were the people who were getting out of the prisons. And I would put that down to a lot of our self-driven education in the jail to understand societal, I don't want to sound as if we're very intellectual, because we're not. It's dead obvious learning when you make the effort to look at the world. What do we need to do? We needed our communities to understand why we were doing what we were doing, that it was for the betterment. So a lot of the prisoners getting out of jail over a period of time became community-based workers, volunteer workers within the community, trying to lift things and improve things. Therefore, people were appreciative of them, and a lot of those people eventually got elected to positions. At one stage, I think it was in the late 1980s or the early 1990s, most of the elected representatives for Sinn Féin were former political prisoners. So that was a fair indication of community view of the people who were getting out of prison. It was positive. But the media, the dominant narrative, somehow had these terrorists. That's not how the people regarded us, because the people knew us.
What about the Good Friday Agreement that you mentioned before? Is that, you would say it might be a failure for the struggle, or is a consequence of that?
The Good Friday Agreement could only have come about because of the conflict. I'm quite convinced of that. There were attempts in the early 1970s and 1980s at political agreements, but the representative body for the majority of the nationalist Republican people weren't party to them, Sinn Féin. So I think, I'm reasonably sure the conflict, the militant end of the conflict, it basically had to happen. One, it's awful people's lives were taken. I really mean that, right? Doesn't matter what lives we're talking about, awful. It's awful the suffering, it's awful the imprisonment. I suffered from it, my family, my wife, my children suffered from it. But I'm still quite convinced it had to happen. No, it didn't have to happen. What we really needed was the British government to say, well, it's okay, we're now going to withdraw from governance here, and we're going to sincerely hope that the people here in the north of Ireland can get their reunification sorted out. But they didn't. They didn't do that. So what we had to do then was force them into that situation that they couldn't, the old era of the colonising power ruling. The British government then came to an agreement. It tried to exclude Irish Republicans, but we've got over that. We're the biggest political party in Ireland now, despite we were kept out of lots of the talks and the run into the Good Friday Agreement. We basically supported the Good Friday Agreement, and then when looking back on it, the Good Friday Agreement was the absolute turning point, setting up the political structures, which we now dominate. So people could say, yeah, but sure, if you're going to get it, you're going to get it. No, you weren't going to get the change. The British government were not going to give. It had to be taken.
Do you think it might be because the British government thought that by withdrawing from the north of Ireland, they might be, let's say, exposing those from their communities, like Protestants in this case?
I don't like using the religious terms. This is nothing, our conflict had nothing to do. Religion was a way down the line in what the important issues were here. It's politics we're talking about here, although I understand what you're saying. But you had to bear in mind Scotland, the big island, Britain, with Scotland, the majority of the population is in England and with Wales. At one stage, there was a major push towards Scottish independence, although it was purely electoral push. On the island of Ireland, in the north of Ireland, we had the push which was militant for removal. I don't know, I really don't know what the mentality is of the colonising power. But if the British had voluntarily withdrawn from the northern part of the island of Ireland, well, maybe that would have been an indicator to the Scottish. Well, where next? Because at one stage, if you remember, the North Sea oil and the Scottish, there was a Scotland. There was to me, back in the early 70s, it looked like Scottish independence was on the cards, but the British government weren't prepared to give that. Obviously, economics. But if the withdrawal from Ireland, or the north of Ireland, had happened, then it might have looked like it was inevitable for Scotland to get it, which could have created major problems for Westminster. I don't know, but it's a possibility that was in their thinking.
Okay.
If they give for the north of Ireland, they'd have to give for Scotland. There was no real push about the Welsh for independence. There was a little bit of push, but not much.
There was a bit of a nationalism.
There was a bit of the Welsh, but it was very low key.
Yeah.
Very low key. But
see.
the Scottish, because of the oil, at one stage looked like it was a goer, but it didn't happen.
And what do you think about that? I mean, Brexit, the north of Ireland voted to remain within the EU.
We did, yeah.
And
Scotland had also voted to remain within the EU.
But they were kept within the UK. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Scottish nationalism is supposed to be way up there, but I mean, there's a couple of, I don't know what the Scottish nationalists can possibly do nowadays, because the North Sea oil is no longer the major factor of what it was in the 70s. And then you also have the Scottish Nationalist Party, which is a wee bit sort of been ripped apart due to the other non-political issues, more personal issues. So I really don't know. To me, the British government are still holding out on the agreement which they made in 1998 to have a referendum. I mean, no one is trying to force militarily the British government to have the referendum. But in 1988, what's nearly 30 years ago, and they still haven't held it. They have an international signed agreement overseen by the United States to hold a referendum. But in the spirit of the goodwill which existed in 1898, there was no date put on for a referendum. It's going to be held. But the power to call the referendum lies with the British government, not the Irish government.
No?
It's solely with the British Secretary of State here. It's not a joint decision between the Irish and the British. It's not overseen by the American government. It's solely in the hands of the British government to call the referendum. However, that's over 30 years, 1998, 08, 18, 25 or so years ago it has taken. But somebody within the British government, maybe 12 years ago, said, I think we'll have a referendum to leave Europe. And it has been held, and they've withdrawn from Europe. So they can make decisions on holding referendums when they want. The referendum was held to whether or not to remain within the EU, and the majority of people in England, because England has 50 million people or 40 odd million people, so whatever way the vote went in England would have meant that the rest of the United Kingdom would have to go. The north of Ireland voted to remain, Scotland remained, but England with the massive population, therefore we're now out of Europe. So the British government can move and hold a referendum when they want, when it's politically what they want, but they still haven't held the referendum which we want.
But can the Parliament here in Belfast say, we want to?
No.
There's no possibility?
No. The power to hold the referendum lies with the British government.
Okay.
Full stop.
Even though now it's a majority in the Parliament for Sinn Féin?
Yeah. It's a Westminster decision, not local stormont, not local.
Okay, if you were to vote tomorrow, would you vote for a united Ireland?
Yeah, I would vote for United Ireland. But the fact that Sinn Féin is the biggest political party on the island of Ireland doesn't necessarily mean that a referendum would go the way of Sinn Féin. Because people will maybe vote for Sinn Féin because they like the representative or they like policy X or policy Y.
Okay.
But people mightn't feel comfortable voting for a reunified Ireland. And that is another thing what I want to bring into the equation here. There's no discussion on what a united Ireland will be. I know what I want within a united Ireland, but there's no, the only people who are holding public discussions on on a referendum are Irish Republicans. There's no attempt by the Irish government in the south or the British government for here in the north for them to host meetings and have academics or professionals explaining what the new transport, what the new health, what the new social services, what anything's going to be. There's no attempt by those two, by the Irish government or the British government. None of them are attempting for people to know, because you can't vote for a concept. You shouldn't be voting for. I like United Ireland. What type of United Ireland? What sort of health service? What sort of housing? What sort of transport system? That's what needs discussed.
Yeah.
And neither of the governments are hosting them. The only people who are hosting those meetings are Irish Republicans.
Do you think it's because no one wants to really look at the issue? They just want to be like, oh, there's something going on in the north of Ireland.
They want,
in the north, but we don't really want to look into that.
Yeah,
because it's too complicated, right?
Well, it's not. It could be that. I don't really know. Maybe it's this residue of colonialism, or maybe it's this residue of, in the south of Ireland, there's two political parties and they have been government for over 100 years. They don't want to upset in the apple cart with a new reunified political situation. There are vested interests in the current situation on the island of Ireland, despite the agreement that the referendum, what are they afraid of? See, the power to hold it lies with the British, but very discreetly, or maybe not discreetly, very upfront. The Irish government are also very supportive. Well, they're supportive in that they're not complaining about the British not holding it. So it's a major issue, and a problem is one problem is that. I mean, I'm not I don't know what sort of transport system would be best in a reunified Ireland. I have an idea of what sort of education system I'd like to see. I'd like to see, there's a medical, the health system I would like to see, social services, pensions. It's all of those things where, I mean, Germany went through it, and it must be complicated. But I mean, there are obviously people in society who know all about those things. We need to hear from them, because people have to know when the referendum is held. They have to know what they're voting for. Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, some time ago, showed us how not to hold a referendum. He lied to the media and said it's all going to be good, but there were no communal meetings for people to ask people, what does it mean? What's going to happen? Yeah. If we vote to leave the EU, what's going to happen for goods, services, transport? But people are finding out after the vote. People should find out before the vote in order to vote if that's what you want.
Absolutely, I agree. But I also believe that there are some hidden interests sometimes.
Of course. Follow the money.
Most of the time.
Follow the money, yeah.
Money and power, if you put them all together, and then you get people without much knowledge about the topic they're discussing.
How do people know? You shouldn't be voting from the heart for things which are going to last basic for generations. That's not good enough. You have to be practical. Yeah. Now, I would vote for United Ireland emotionally, but I'm going to. I imagine lots of Republicans the same. We're going to have to know what the new system is going to be. And that's why I'm saying to you, I wouldn't equate voting for Sinn Féin today with how people vote on the referendum for the reunification of the country.
Okay.
It might be there might be the same, it might not.
Do you think there might be minorities in Ireland who might feel a bit threatened? For example, let's say if someone feels like very, very British and they live still in the north of Ireland, they might feel like, I think this reunification of Ireland is going to...
Absolutely, you're correct. I would talk quite a lot with people from the unionist community, and two, from the loyalist community within the unionist community. And what's very important to those people is identity. I could be wrong, but I've heard them verbalising identity is essential to them. But that's what's agreed onto the Good Friday Agreement. You can be declared as Irish, British, Irish and British, whatever definition you want. But more importantly than that, they will have to be treated as equals. They're just citizens. That's very, very important. I mean, part of my mobilisation as a young man against societal ills was discrimination. I certainly wouldn't be party and agreeing in the New Ireland for any part of our community to be discriminated against. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't stand for it, and I would most certainly move against it. So, yeah, I mean, I would love people to give it a go to see how we can reorganize on the island. Yeah,
because their symbols are very important for them. You said.
Absolutely.
So what if they cannot, or if there's a new flag that doesn't represent them? Because you said identity is key for them.
Yes, but my identity is also important to me, right? But I imagine I'd be a bit more practical than just moving for identity. But we need to be moving in that direction, and that's obviously part of what we need to be talking about. But we Irish Republicans are the only people encouraging people to take part in talks. And at the moment, not many people from the working class unions community are engaging in that. I think they're almost afraid of it. I mean, but it shouldn't be sprung on people as a decision to make in ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance mean they're stupid. I mean not knowing.
Yeah.
That people have to know what the possibilities are for the future.
Even walking in Belfast today around these streets can be... Do you think people feel somehow afraid, or there's tension?
No. I'm quite convinced. Life here in Belfast is pretty okay. Pretty okay. How things have improved it's beyond measure. I talk with a lot of people from different countries. I'd say Belfast in the main is a much safer place than most other cities. Well, most other cities in Britain as well as in Europe, and most certainly in America.
What do you think, like why, for example, if you go to like big cities in England, they are so unsafe?
Why do I think they're unsafe?
Yeah, why do you think they can be like so unsafe?
I don't know. I don't know. All I could say to you is people are very safe in Belfast. That's for definite.
Okay.
So maybe I should just leave it at that, as opposed to say people are unsafe in other cities in Britain. But there's very little one-on-one crime in Belfast.
Yeah, no, if you go to the data and if you go to the statistics, you will see like London, Manchester, Liverpool, they are becoming quite unsafe.
Yeah. So I think I live in a pretty safe city, Right. I feel very comfortable in Belfast. I feel very comfortable in any area of Belfast. And I think most of us who are citizens are. We now have a situation where we're a generation out of conflict. And it's very important that generation has not seen it. Therefore, in the main, everybody feels okay in Belfast, I would suggest.
Are there any politicians now that were involved in the Troubles that are now part of the Sinn Féin, for example? Are there any?
I don't know what you mean.
Are there any, so for example, these ex-prisoners or ex-members of the IRA?
Well,
are they part of the Sinn Féin?
Most of us are all old now, but most of us would be members of Sinn Féin. Like I'm still a political activist. I'm a Sinn Féin activist. It's just my activism in another way, and have been from I come out of prison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, in reality, what was I about prior to my imprisonment? if it wasn't political activism. I'm still a political activist.
Okay.
I'm not letting go of my activism at all, because I'm still trying to get what my activism, my other activism was trying to achieve. I'm trying to get it in another way with electoral activism.
And when you got out of jail in 1993, did you think you were gonna go back into like maybe violence, or were you more inclined to peace talks and so on?
I would have been a very strong supporter of the peace talks and peace process. When I got out of prison, the IRA had just called a ceasefire, the temporary ceasefire. It was broken for a year and a half, and then it was reinstated. I was a very strong supporter of the peace. I mean, every conflict has to end, or everybody's going to be dead. You know, and the reality is,
absolutely, yeah.
And what we had then was the majority of people. I mean, the ceasefire or the cessation, it just didn't happen. Wasn't decided. It was discussed within our communities. Meetings were held all over the country, and people were asked what they thought. And then when people came up with the yes, we think it's a good idea, that was when the decision. You can't impose a conflict on a community and expect it to support you. In the same way, you can't impose a cessation of the conflict on the community which supported the conflict.
Right.
You can't impose a cessation of that conflict. The people who agreed to support the conflict, they're the people who have to support the ending of the conflict. And that was done within our communities. People were consulted, community meetings were held, and people agreed with the cessation.
I see.
You can't impose it, although some people didn't agree with the cessation, and that's why you had small groupings of people who wanted to continue, but they have been very, very ineffective, and basically have disappeared.
A question that I have for you is, if you think the decommissioning of the guns, for example, was done correctly, like
the decommissioning.
Yeah, because if you read some books, it says like there's some confusion about like how many guns were decommissioned and where they were put down, and all these international agencies that came over to check that the process was done correctly.
Yeah. We had very decent people come over to oversee the disposal of weaponry, and some local people who had quite a major status. Harold Good probably is the one you mightn't have heard of him. He would have been a minister, a religious minister within Presbyterian, I think, church. Good people who were well intentioned. But what I would say to you is, for 40 years, the IRA was able to purchase and import weaponry into the island of Ireland. See, the disposal of the weapons, it was more of a PR stunt, because if the IRA wanted, it could have got loads of more weapons in again.
When you say PR, what do you mean?
PR, I would mean, is it's more the disposal of them was to be seen to be doing something.
Yeah.
To me, it was meaningless. If you still had weapons today and we're not wanting to use them, then they're not really weapons. Well, they are weapons, but they're not going to be used. So, but it was more of a face. It was a PR thing. The weapons have to be done away with. Well, you can do away with them, but you get more in if you wanted. The key thing is you wanted peace, and if you want peace, you're not going to get more weapons in. Okay, we'll get rid of them.
Okay.
Do you get the point? It's important to get the point. That even if you have weapons, the key issue is you're not going to use them. That's the weaponry and explosives. You could have them sitting for 100 years, but you're never going to use them.
I see.
But for publicity purposes, it had to be seen that there was this gesture. The weapons are getting done away with. But as everybody knows, the IRA really doesn't have difficulty purchasing weapons. But the key issue is they were prepared no longer to do that.
I see.
You with me? You get that point?
I am indeed, yeah.
The issue is not using weapons.
Right. I just noticed, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just noticed this flag, which is from a group that actually carried out some operations in my country.
Uh-huh.
So I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on geopolitics now these days? For example, like we have the Palestinian issue, we have the war in Ukraine, and I just wanted to know your views on those.
And we have a lot of people still in prison by the Spanish government who took part in the Basque conflict. Without going too deeply into it, in a similar way as you've come over to have the conversation with me, other organisations in different parts of the world would talk to us a lot. What did you do? What was your process? How did you this, or why did you do that? Are you with me?
I am.
And we would have very close association with the Basque people, right? I would have been in the Basque country quite a few times, talking to the political ex-prisoner groupings about what we have done, how we look after our political prisoners, what we have done to try and make sure all of our prisoners get out of prison. That hasn't happened there yet, right? A lot of people are still in prison within the Spanish prisons and in the Basque country also. So if people ask us what we have done, we tell them, but we can't tell them what to do. Do you get the difference here?
Yeah.
We can tell them our mistakes, we can tell them what we did and which worked, but we can't tell them what will work in their situation. The Basques are only one place. We've been in different parts of the world where there are conflicts, and once again, we would only be prepared to tell them what we did, what was right, what we worked out right, and what wasn't correctly to do. And people seem to think that there may be a magic solution, and all we say is, all you need is the will. And when there's will and positive intent, things can be worked out. What we eventually found out is we got an honest intermediary broker to ensure that the British government held to their word and that Irish Republicans held to their word, and it has worked. All you need is the intent to want to do it.
Right. And
to end conflict, yeah, it's not a bad idea.
And your views on the conflict in Palestine?
Well, knowing what it is to have a colonial power in your country, we can sympathise very much with the Palestinians, and I'm really, really delighted to see that cessation has happened. By the way, when I look back, you see, I hate trying to explain things because it looks like you're looking at excuses. What happened in October a few years ago, and it's horrendous, what has been happening to the Palestinian people as a whole for at least, let's say, just within the last half century is also horrendous. I'm not justifying what happened in October, but I'm certainly couldn't justify what the Israelis have done in return. But people think the Palestinian-Israeli thing happened from October, that awful attack. So what you need is an intent, and sometimes you need the powerful to be benevolent. You understand me by that? Yeah. You need goodwill also from the strong as well, from those who are somewhat weaker. Because if they can show a degree of goodwill, okay, they've stopped bombing, but fuck me, they were bombing people living in tents. That's where you needed the powerful to be shown a little bit of decency. Whether it's Trump's got to stop, or Benjamin is happy, Netanyahu is happy to stop the bombing, good, and I sincerely hope it holds. But what we need is a settlement politically, not just the conflict, militant conflict to end.
Yeah, you mean an agreement?
Yeah, but we need the agreement and positive actions coming out of the agreement. People need a place to live. I mean, 3-4 months ago, Donald Trump was talking about taking over Gaza and fucking building a holiday resort on it. That's people's country. That's where people live. He thought he's going to build a holiday resort on it. I mean, yeah. you need goodwill, good intent, and then it's not a bad starting point. So, but in a similar way in the Basque Country, I don't want to be misquoted and I don't have enough knowledge of it, but I mean, it's just a horrendous attitude that the Spanish seem to have. One, towards the people who are currently holding. There has been no agreement about the release of those prisoners. And they're dispersed through, I mean, in numerous prisons. So I'd love to see an end to the Basque-Spanish conflict. I'd love to see it, because you all seem nice enough people. But the powerful is Madrid, and sometimes you need the powerful to make the first move.
I see. We might disagree on that one, but it's okay.
But that's my view. You've asked me my view, and that is my view. I wouldn't be knowledgeable enough to give much more than what I've said to you.
Of course.
And I hope it doesn't sound like rubbish to you.
No,
but I mean what I say. If the powerful or the stronger party can give a bit of ground, that really does create goodwill. Even when the British showed their goodwill by the initial change in prison policy, it had a good effect on our communities.
Right. I'm going to end up the podcast today, and I normally prepare like a few questions, right, to end up the interview. So I'm going to go ahead, okay? First, I'm going to ask you to define these people with one word, okay? It's a person, or it could be also a word, okay? The first one will be Margaret Thatcher.
Hate figure in Ireland.
Bobby Sands.
Heroic figure.
Jerry Adams.
Good leader.
Ian Paisley.
A man who changed.
Okay. The Irish Civil War.
Still sort of about us. That's not one word.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. The King of England.
The King of England. Indifferent to him.
The 1981 hunger strike.
Momentous period in Ireland.
Simon Harris.
Weak, I think.
Michelle O'Neill.
Strong woman.
Vladimir Putin.
KGB.
Okay.
And still seems to be KGB.
Okay. Zelensky.
Don't fancy him at all.
Me neither. Netanyahu.
At all.
Okay. The European Union.
A great bulwark in theory against war. That's what I thought about. Okay, it was a common market initially, but I thought it tied countries well together, and it has prevented a lot of war.
Okay.
It didn't stop the...
Yeah, that's how
Ukraine,
it started, right? Just to prevent France and Germany from fighting each other. The last one is Michael Culbert. I'm going to ask you to define yourself.
A man with many hats.
A man with many hats. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I think that would be okay. I wouldn't bum. Some of them are maybe negative, but many hats.
Great. I'm going to ask you just a few questions on yes or no. Okay. Was the armed struggle necessary?
Yeah.
Would you do it again?
Not at this stage.
If you had to go back those years and take
Oh
the
yeah,
decision?
I think it was quite justified, yeah.
Should Britain apologise for its actions in the north of Ireland?
Oh yeah.
Was the British Army an occupying force?
Definitely.
Was the peace process fair to the victims?
Not as good as it could have been. Yeah. I think that's fair enough comment. By the way, the victims being...
The what, sorry?
The victims being... Are you talking about the people?
Oh, I'm talking about everyone who like, for example, civilians in this case, who had nothing to do with
what about the general population?
Oh, general population also.
I mean, there are people who are traumatized that had nothing to do with the conflict. And there were people discriminated against through generations, etc. etc. But once again, I know I'm moving out of the what you want, but sometimes you just can't set particular parameters. This is a society which has been in degrees of conflict for centuries.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Is there real peace in the north of Ireland today?
Yeah.
And do you think the British government fears a united Ireland?
Definitely. Well, no, but I think the Southern Irish government would have major worries about a reunited Ireland.
Do you think Ireland has lost its identity?
No. I don't really know what you mean, but my immediate answer is no.
Okay. Do you believe the reconciliation between the communities is possible?
Do I believe which?
Reconciliation between the communities.
Oh yeah. Depends what you mean by reconciliation. Once again, language.
Full reconciliation, like.
Yeah.
You know,
oh, absolutely.
Respect each other, the identities, and so on.
Respect is a key factor there. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you like a couple of personal questions, and then we will be done. Okay. If you could tell me a smell that takes you back to Belfast in the 70s.
Fuck. I don't know. That's a very difficult question.
A face you will never forget?
A face? I'm looking over here at Bobby Sands, but that probably I knew Frank Hughes better than I knew Bobby Sands. Frank Hughes.
Okay.
Hunger striker.
A place in Ireland that feels like peace?
My home.
A dream you still have?
Probably the reunification of my country. Yeah.
A regret that you carry?
Missing out on my children.
A moment when you truly felt free?
Maybe the day of my release from prison, but that wasn't really free, but I got out of prison.
Mm-hmm. What makes you angry today?
Angry. Ignorance.
What do you miss from those days?
Which days?
The 70s, for example.
I was a much younger man. I missed out a lot of life with my family and stuff, you know, but I don't want to sound as if I'm modelling. You've asked me a difficult question. Mm-hmm. Probably playing football, maybe.
Okay. What do you fear now?
I fear dog whistle tactics by people who don't want peace here. By dog whistle tactics, do you understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. They'll say the awfulest things and get carried in the media, and they'll mobilise some fucking young men and women to negativity.
Mm-hmm. A word to describe forgiveness.
A word to describe forgiveness?
Or how would you describe forgiveness?
Maybe you need understanding for it, maybe.
And how would you define freedom?
Knowing that you can express your view without hurting others.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe in destiny?
No, I think you make your mark, yeah.
And do you believe in God?
No.
And the last question, if there was something you haven't told anyone, and now you feel like telling me just because we chatted for over an hour today, what would you tell me?
No. No, I can't really. I could think of stuff, but I'm not going to tell you. Can't think. Where do you get these questions from?
This is the question that I always do at the end of the podcast.
No, I don't think there's anything that I know that I would feel I would want to divulge. Mm-hmm. No.
That's okay. I appreciate your time, and thank you for having me today in Belfast. It's been great, and it's been fantastic to learn from you.
Well, I don't know if you've picked up something that you hadn't known before, good, but hopefully it would have been of some use to you. Hopefully it might be of use to somebody else, to understanding what has people doing stuff that we did. We're not mad, and we're not morons, and we're not, most people I know are nice people, but we're terrorists. Mm-hmm.
This is the end of the podcast, and I appreciate your patience, like setting up the equipment today, and I appreciate your help.
Okay.
And I hope I see you again soon.
Good. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you very much.
Si te ha gustado la entrevista, dale a like y suscríbete para más contenido. No olvides dejar un comentario con tus propuestas para futuras entrevistas.